Hello, my dears. It's Katie, and I'm here today to do something that I promised I would never do again, and that is a vlog. Now, before you jump all over me and be like, Katie, you said last time that you were never ever going to do a vlog again. Yes, I did. Yes, I did. But then a couple of months ago, I was talking to my friend Kara from Wilde Book Garden, channel linked below as always. And we decided to do a project together. We've done a lot of buddy reads together, and we have a lot of similar tastes and end up having a lot of similar thoughts and feelings on things. And so we just thought that it would be a really good idea to go through our favorite shelves and then just pick out a few books for the other person to read. So we've exchanged some favorite books. And it was a long process. We started thinking about this back in January, and we're only getting to it now. But yeah, it was a long process. It was really hard to narrow it down to 3 books to pick per person. And then we had some interesting shipping things going on. But we're finally here, and I'm really excited about this. And I think Kara's excited about doing her version as well. But I'm going to vlog my experience. And I think because of the way that I'm going to do it, it will be a lot easier to do it in a vlog form. Because one, it's a special project, and two, it's more catered to something specific rather than just me aimlessly going through my month and being like, hey, this is what I'm doing. Don't do that. Please don't do that. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to introduce the books to you, and then at some point I will decide what I'm going to do. I'm going to do 1 book a month, just to kind of keep it low key for myself. I'm not going to rush through them all. So we've got 3 books to talk about. The first book that Kara sent me is Empire of Sand by Tasha Suri, and this is the first book in the, I don't know what the actual series is called, but this is the first book in that, this desert fantasy series. And this book has been on my radar and my TBR system in many, many forms over the years. And I think at one point I got it, and then I might have gotten rid of it or something. I don't remember. It's been a whole journey to get me to this point of reading this book. But Kara has talked very, very highly about this book on her channel. She talks about how much she loves it. And some of the reasons that she thinks that I'm going to love this is because there's a slow burn romance element, and that there's just something about it that she thinks that I'll really like besides that. It's one of those books that's I guess kind of hard to explain why you love it, but you do. And when you know someone else is gonna like it, it's just I think you're gonna like it. It's hard to explain why, but here. So I'm really excited to get to this one, especially when I hear the word slow burn romance. It's one of my favorite romantic tropes, or themes in books. I just love it. I'm so soft. So I'm really excited to get to this. I'm not 100% sure about what this is all about, except for that it is a desert fantasy, and I think it might be Own Voices so I'm just really excited to get to this. And this will probably be the first book that I pick up right away in May. And then the second book that she sent me was Where the Mountain Meets the Moon by Grace Lynn. This is a book that I have been wanting to read for so long. And I mean for so long. I love mythology elements and folklore elements in books. I just love learning about different cultures that way, and I've just heard absolutely phenomenal things about this trilogy. I think it's a series of standalones that are loosely related or something. I don't know, but this is, I think, the first in the publication order, and Kara knows that I love middle grade and I love mythology, folklore stuff. And I've heard the writing is absolutely gorgeous for this. So I'm just really, really looking forward to it. Plus, look at how stunning that cover is. I'm so excited for this. But I think this is a Chinese-based, like, folklore, mythology, fantasy book. But yes, I'm just super excited to get to this one, and I will probably pick this one up right away in June. The third and final book that Kara got me is Dark and Deepest Red by Anna Marie McLemore. And for those of you who don't know this about me, I do not vibe very well with magical realism / fabulism. It's just, I've had a lot of bad luck with it, and I tend to not enjoy it. But I trust Kara, and she says that Anna Marie McLemore is what converted her over to enjoying fabulism and magical realism. So I'm going to trust her on this, and I'm actually really excited for this because if there is any of Anna Marie McLemore's books that I would pick up, it would be this one, because here are the reasons. One, it deals with a plague. And if we know anything about me, I like plagues and things like that. I just find them very interesting. And like, even though we're living through what we're living through right now, it's still something that I find fascinating, just seeing the, like, and there are specific things I like about it, like just how they tend to change a society, not only just socially, economically, politically, like just all of it. It's just super fascinating to see how all of that comes about. Plus also just the medical aspects are interesting. I don't know. I just find plague things fascinating. And so this deals with the dancing plague, I believe. Yeah, 1518. So yeah, that would be the dancing plague that happened in France. So it follows that. Second of all, is queer, apparently, which I didn't know. Though I think I've heard McLemore's books tend to be queer, have queer things in them. So I'm really excited about that aspect. And I don't know, I just have a feeling that this is going to be one that I love. So I'm really looking forward to getting to this one as well. And this is probably going to be the one that I pick up in July. I've kind of laid out that loose schedule. I'll let you know if it changes. But yes, my plan is to read one book a month starting in May. And I've kind of told you the order that I'm at least tentatively going to pick them up in. So stay tuned. My plan is to, in order to keep this semi-shortish, my plan is to check in with you at the beginning, like before I read the book, then in the middle, so when I'm about halfway through the book, and then at the end to give you my final wrap-up thoughts about what I thought about of the book. So yes, lots to look forward to. I'm really excited to do this. So without further ado, next clip will be my first thoughts of Empire of Sand. So it is May 1st, so that means I am about ready to start Empire of Sand by Tasha Suri. I am really interested in picking this one up. It just sounds like something that I would potentially really like, despite me not having the best of luck with desert fantasy. For whatever reason, desert fantasy and I have yet to find my favorite one. I've read several in the last couple of years and struggled. But I'm really looking forward to this one. It just, I don't know. It just seems like it could be really good. And Kara says that it's got really great world building, which is something that I love. An angsty slow burn romance, which, yes, please. And that it's got some really, really great characters, which is also something that I really, really like. So all of those are a recipe for a potentially fantastic Katie book. So I'm really interested to see what I ultimately end up thinking of this one. There are 34 chapters total, so the plan is to read, I don't know, roughly 2 a day, and that will take me to May 17th, roughly, is will be right around the time where I finish this. So let's get to it. It is now May 7th, and I'm now halfway through Empire of Sand by Tasha Suri. I am a bit ahead of schedule. I was originally supposed to be about halfway, I think, sometime next week, but I ended up really enjoying it, and I also ended up having to reschedule some things because I've got some new things coming up next week. It's a whole situation, but I needed to do it a little bit faster for a specific reason, and I also wanted to because, as I said, it's one of those books that's like really, really easy to get into in some ways. So far, my thoughts, now being about halfway, is that I'm really, really enjoying it. I'm actually liking it more than I kind of expected to. As I mentioned in my previous clip, I have like a complicated relationship with desert fantasy. For whatever reason, I just haven't found one that has really gripped me, and now I kind of have, so I'm really excited about that. But it did take me a few chapters to settle into. I'm not gonna lie, I was just, it didn't grip me from the very, very beginning. I was intrigued enough to continue, but I was like, okay, when am I gonna finally settle in? And I did after about, I think, chapter like 4 or 5, but I'm thoroughly enjoying it so far. I also do find it to be a little bit repetitive at times, but that's okay because like this is a primarily character-driven book, and the repetitiveness is important for the overarching story. So it's a minor complaint in the grand scheme of things. I love the characters a lot. Amun is probably my favorite character. He's phenomenal. I love him. He needs to be cherished and loved forever. I also really like Mare, who is our main protagonist. But at times she does rub me the wrong way, but overall I love her. And the world building is also phenomenal. I also really, really love that. So far, I'm really loving this book, and I'm very interested to see where this goes, especially with the events of where I left off last night. But overall, it's safe to say that I'm really enjoying this, and I think I finally found a desert fantasy that I can say I really love. So since I never really mentioned what this book is about, is it does follow our main character, Mare, who is a nobleman's daughter, and she ends up, it's like she has like a very specific kind of magic that is inherent to her people, and she gets caught in this storm, and she gets caught doing this magic. They've been kind of hiding her away. But because of now that she's been caught, she's come to the attention of this man named the Maha, and she is now has a kind of a marriage that she has to enter into. So she marries this guy, and what happens after that is she gets taken to this temple, and she is being required to do certain things, and things kind of go from there. It's also a slow burn romance, and it's angsty, which like are two of my absolute favorite things. I just love the romance tropes that are in this book. Like they're just some of my favorite things. So it's like arranged marriage can be kind of hit or miss for me if done in a specific way. The arranged marriage part was like, it was kind of happened right at the beginning of the book. It wasn't just like a drawn out thing. All the like the angsty slow burn romance part of them like now dealing with all of that is excellent. I am in love with watching that all unfold. It's super good, and it's probably my favorite part of the book, honestly, is the angsty slow burn romance, like on top of the world building. Like those two things are making for a very, very excellent reading experience for me, and I can't wait to see it all culminate. But yes, so far I'm really loving this, and I can't wait to keep reading, and I will update you as to my final thoughts once I've finished. Finally finished Empire of Sand by Tasha Suri, and overall I really, really, really enjoyed it. I really liked the world building, and I loved the characters, particularly Amun. He's a delight. And the writing was great, and the plot, while secondary, was also pretty good. I will say that after letting it sit with me for a little bit, though, that there were certain aspects that I would have liked to see expanded on more. Like, it just felt like something was missing, particularly with relation to like character dynamics and certain themes, and like certain aspects of the world. Like, I would have loved to have seen more like historical background on the world and more about the magic systems and everything, because like while we got a lot of good stuff from it, I just felt like I wanted more. It didn't feel satisfying in a way. And also the same thing with certain character dynamics. Like, while I loved Mare and Damun's relationship a lot, there were just certain aspects of it I was just like, okay, I don't want to say it felt rushed, but there were just certain parts of it I wanted to see explored a little bit more, and I wanted to see, I don't know, it just felt like something was missing. It's hard to explain exactly, but I love them a lot, and I loved what we did get to see. I just wanted something more from it. And same with Mare and her mother. That felt very unsatisfying, just their whole relationship dynamic. I was like, okay, yes, but explore that a little bit more. It just didn't feel complete. And I don't know if other people feel similarly to me about this, but like, I did love it a lot, and it would be a book that I would recommend to people, but at the same time it just didn't feel fully completed or fleshed out, or it had something missing from it, and it's hard to pinpoint what exactly that was. So overall, I really loved this, even though it might sound like I have a lot of critiques. I really did enjoy it. Like, when I was reading it, I wanted to keep going, and when I was away from it, I was like, wait, I want to get back to this book. And that doesn't happen to me very often these days, I feel like, so that was really refreshing. And it's definitely one I want to reread again at some point, because there were some just really, really great things in here, and I can definitively say that this is my favorite desert fantasy that I have read. Out of the ones that I have picked up and read, I've liked this one the most, so that's a win for me. And yeah, I just really liked it, and I do want to say, Kara, I do agree with you, like, on all the points as to what you said. I was gonna like angsty slow burn romance. It's there. It just needed to be more. World building, excellent. I also wanted more from it, but I loved what we got to see. That was probably the strongest point of the book for me. And just like also being able to, like, having a hard time verbalizing what it is I loved. Also accurate. So I agree with you a lot on what you said. But yes, so far this experiment is going well. Happy June, happy Pride Month, and Migraine and Headache Awareness Month. We're back with another book, and this time it's Where the Mountain Meets the Moon by Grace Lynn. This is the second book Kara got me. I almost picked the Anna Marie McLemore book because it has queer themes in it, but this one was just calling to me, so this is what I'm picking for June. And I believe Kara picked this one for me because of the mythology, folklore elements. And she also mentioned something about there being like illustrations in here. Ah, yes, yes, there are some illustrations in here, which I'm really, really excited about. I love illustrations in books whenever I can get them. And I just have a feeling that I'm really gonna love this. It's a Chinese inspired, like, fantasy novel, I think. But I love mythology and folklore and all of that in my books, so I'm particularly excited to get to this one. So, just like last time, I'm going to give you my initial thoughts as to what I think I'm gonna like. I think I'm gonna love this one, and then I'll check back in at the middle way mark and then wrap up at the end. So, there are 48 chapters in this. And we'll see how many I get to in a given day. I'm going to be really loose about it. Like last month, I originally had like a plan, and then I threw that plan out the window and just did my own thing with it. But I'm really excited to get to this, and I will be starting it later today. And then check back in with you when I reach the halfway point. So I'm now halfway through, or a little over halfway through, Where the Mountain Meets the Moon by Grace Lin. I'm absolutely loving this a lot. Kara was absolutely right. I absolutely adore the folklore elements, and the full page and just like illustrations in general for the chapter headings are absolutely gorgeous. Let me see if I can find one to show you, because they're just absolutely stunning. I love them so much, and overall I'm just really enjoying this. I'm not gonna lie though, it did take me a little bit to sink in to the way that this is being written. I usually struggle at the beginning of books. It takes a very special and specific kind of book for me to just be able to just jump in and love it immediately. So basically, I'm just having my normal reading experience. It didn't take too long. This is a very fast-moving book. And actually, if any of you have ever read the book My Father's Dragon, this has very similar vibes to it. And I don't normally do the, if you read and liked this book, you might like this one. But honestly, like, if you loved My Father's Dragon, or if you read and enjoyed this, I think you could enjoy the other one. Like, I grew up loving and adoring My Father's Dragon. And now I'm reading this, and I'm just really loving it. So just to tell you a little bit about what this is about now that I have a better understanding, this follows our main character, Minli, who is a young Chinese girl, and she grew up in a village at the base of this mountain called the Valley of Fruitless Mountain, where her and her parents live, and they have like a farm and stuff. And they're not very wealthy or very well off. They're very poor and not very fortunate. And Minli grew up listening to her father tell her stories all the time, and he still tells her stories because it's just a fun activity that they can do without spending a lot of money. And even though her mom doesn't like the fact that they're talking about stories and things, she allows it from time to time. But ultimately, Minli ends up taking her father's stories to heart, and she decides to go on a quest to go and find some of the figures from these stories that are being told to try and bring more fortune to the family. And all kinds of crazy and fun things happen along the way. And as I already mentioned, like, this has very much of like that folklore vibe, very fast moving, fast paced. It doesn't, like, at first glance, it doesn't feel like it has a lot of depth to it. But once you really sit and think about it, and like as you continue reading, you realize that there's a lot more to this story than first glance. And yeah, I'm just really, really enjoying this so far, and I can't wait to continue on. I'm probably going to finish this in the next couple of days, but I'm just absolutely having a blast, and I love everything about this. And I do know that there are like companion books that go with this, and I would love to pick those up at some point as well. But for now, I want to just continue on with this and see where it ends up, and we'll go from there. I'll be back to update you when I'm finished and give you my final thoughts. I just finished Where the Mountain Meets the Moon by Grace Lynn, and I absolutely loved this book. Kara, you did a good job. This is definitely a favorite of mine. So, where to begin with this? Overall, I've loved absolutely every element of this. The writing was fantastic. I loved the folklore vibes and just the duality aspect of the writing, of the telling of this story. It had a narrative perspective with our main character, Minley, and all of the characters that she met along the way, and like her overarching storyline. It had a lot of like folklore elements to it, where it would tell specific stories and tales that pertained to some of the things that were going on in this. And I just absolutely loved that, as I said, that duality element. It was just fantastically done. Like, I will not deny that at the very beginning of this, it took me a little bit of time to sink into the writing, just because it didn't feel fully realized, like a fully realized story yet. But that was more of a me thing than I think a story thing, because it always takes me a little bit of extra time to sink into a story that I'm reading. For whatever reason, I don't pretend to understand how I work, but books need to win me over before I fall in love with them. But it didn't take very long for this one, so we love that. So loved the writing aspect. Very well done. Just great overall. Very strong story. I love the world building, because folklore elements and vibes, like it felt like a fairy tale. And it felt like a folklore. Like, I have my old-fashioned storybook over there sitting on my shelf, and it just had a similar feel to it, and it's just something I love. It's just it has a certain comforting aspect to it, if you know what I mean. And so, yeah, I just loved getting that in this. And as I already briefly mentioned before, it also kind of reminded me a little bit of My Father's Dragon, which I will probably be rereading shortly. And I love that book. So the fact that I got that in this, it was just brilliant. So really loved that. The plot line was also really great. I loved as I said, mixture of everything. I loved the whole plot line as to what Minley was doing and why she was doing things, and all of the things that she learned and all of the people that she met along the way. It was just all great. Flowed really well. Had a really great time with it. And then, of course, I loved the characters. And honestly, like, I don't want to call this a character-based story, because it's really not. It's a really nice mixture of, like, plot-driven and character-driven, which I also really liked a lot. But I really liked the characters that we interacted with. Like, Minley was a delight. I loved Dragon. What a delightful character. Just across the board. He's a gem and should be treasured forever. I loved like the minor characters, and just how, even though we might not have interacted with them for very long, they were fully realized characters that made you feel some kind of connection to them, and they were interesting. You might have only interacted with them for like maybe a chapter or a couple of pages, but they still felt real, and like they didn't feel like they were just there for a random purpose and then just could, toss aside, and you'll be like, wait, who is that again? Like, it felt good. And I really liked them. Ma and Ba were delightful and great. I loved getting their like, once again, duality storyline, because we were primarily following Minli and Dragon and all of the characters we met over there. But then we also got Ma and Ba's story. And I really liked that a lot as well, because just once again, that duality storyline of like getting the like the narrative, like the main narrative, but then like a side story or like a folk tale told in between, to illustrate something or to just help you understand or learn something better. So it was just like, Minli's storyline was the main one, but then Ma and Ba's storyline was like a side storyline that was also intertwined and interconnected. It was just so well done. So well done. I absolutely loved it. And I'm definitely going to reread this again at some point. And I also definitely want to pick up the 2 companion novels. I don't know the proper order to read them in. I'm going to try and get my hands on them at some point. So that's where we're at. I thoroughly enjoyed this. Thanks so much for introducing this to me, Kara. It's been on my radar for so long, and I'm so glad I finally got a chance to read it. So that's it for June, and I will check back in with you when I'm getting ready to pick up my 3rd and final book. Hard to believe that we're almost there, but we are. But yes, I will check back in with you when it's time. Well, it's July, and so now it's time for me to start Dark and Deepest Red by Anna Marie McLemore. I'm really excited for this one. I'm not gonna lie, like, for those of you who've been following my channel for a while, you know I don't generally get along with magical realism and or fabulism very well, but I trust Kara. This is the last pick that she picked for me, and I am surprisingly really excited for this one. This is about the dancing plague in 1518, which happened in Strasbourg, Germany, and like, honestly, that's enough to sell me. You guys know I love plague things. Like, I literally wrote my medieval studies thesis on plague art, like how the Black Plague influenced art and literature. So like, I've always had a deep fascination for the plague, and so this one is going to just probably be up my alley, just a feeling that I get. But the reason that Kara picked this for me, or some of the reasons, are that apparently this has really, really gorgeous writing, which, I tend not to always pay attention to writing when I'm reading, but sometimes writing is just something that really grabs me, and it is something that I pay attention to. It really depends on the book. So I'll make sure to pay a little bit closer attention to the writing in this one when I read. And then there's also apparently queer rep, which I am very excited for. I always love seeing that kind of representation in books. And then last is, and I'm not quite sure what she means by this, but she says the red shoes. And I'm not sure if she means like descriptions for them, or if she's just talking about like the specific folk tale, or if it's just how they're incorporated or just in general. But I'm very interested to see if I can figure out what she meant by that. So yes, I'm very, very excited to get to this. Yeah, as I said, I don't know much more than what I've already told you. So yeah, we'll just get into it. And of course, I'll update you when I'm about halfway through. So I'm now halfway through Dark and Deepest Red, and I'm really actually quite surprised at how much I'm enjoying this. I'm not surprised because of, the content or whatever, but I am surprised because, I just generally don't like magical realism and fabulism. But for some reason, it doesn't feel that way to me. It's hard to explain it, but it doesn't feel like magical realism or fabulism to me when I'm reading it, if that makes sense. So yeah, that's where we're at on this. But basically, what this is about is it is a dual timeline story. One timeline takes place in 1518 during the time of the outbreak of the Dancing Plague, and the second timeline is in current day and following a couple of different characters and their interactions with being ancestors of, I think, specific people who lived in the plague. And that's a trope and like a plot line that I tend to really enjoy in stories. Just not necessarily just like dual timeline, because I do generally like those when they're done well, but also just like the generational differences and things. But the primary characters that we follow, or the primary storyline, I should say, that we interact with, is the one in 1518. That's the one that I would argue has more significance, because like the storylines are tied together, but they're connected in a variety of different ways. But like you need to understand everything that happened in 1518 to kind of understand what's happening in current day. And I'm just really enjoying every facet of this so far. So the primary character that we are following back in 1518 is a Romani girl, and I really love that. Like, I wasn't expecting that to make a huge appearance. Like, I figured it would make an appearance because they were and are a very prominent people. But I love the way that Anna Marie McLemore has integrated that into their work. It's just not a group of people you see in books very often. So that was really, really lovely and a very nice, pleasant surprise for me, for a variety of reasons. I won't get into it here, but I have an interesting connection, like historically, from like my ancestral background with the Romani people. So yeah, it was just really interesting to see that, and I'm just so glad that they are integrated in a nice and respectful way. So really excited to see that. And there is another Romani character that we follow in present day, which I think is interesting. And then we also have a trans character, so it does have those queer elements, so Kara was right about that. And Kara was also right about the writing style. I do love the writing in this book a lot. And if you guys know anything about me, you know that I tend not to pay attention to writing when I read, for the most part. But I made sure to pay extra attention to this because Kara thought it was something I was going to like, and she was right. The writing is gorgeous. And I mean, the red shoes aspect of the storyline is also really interesting. But of course, I also find the plague stuff fascinating. One thing that I love about plague stuff is just like seeing the impact it has on every facet of a life of a society, not only economic, but socially, politically, all of it. And even the repercussions of it afterwards is very interesting. Societies usually go through a huge change after something like this happens. And so it's just really fascinating for me to see it show up in a book. So, so far, I am thoroughly enjoying this. I feel like I can't quite talk about it yet because I haven't let it sink in yet. This is one of those books, at least for me, where I need to sit with it and like absorb everything that I'm reading first before I can fully talk about it. So I'm not quite there yet, but so far I am really enjoying this, and I can't wait to continue. It's hard to believe that I'm halfway at this point already. But I'm definitely looking forward to continuing. And I will update you once I finished. I finished Dark and Deepest Red, and I should say I finished this a while ago, but I never sat down and filmed my final thoughts. But I did end up really loving this. I kind of had to sit with my thoughts on this one at the end for a little while, just because there was just so much to take in and so much for me to think about. But something that I particularly loved about this was the theme of identity and a theme of multi-generational trauma and like just history repeating itself and everything. It was just so interesting and such a fascinating study of it all. And I don't know, there was just so much about this book that I ended up really loving. I wasn't sure how I was going to feel about it before going in. I mean, I expected to like it because plague things, and it just sounded really interesting. But I seriously liked this a lot more than I thought I would. The writing was incredible. And, you know, if and when I go back and reread this, because I probably will, and I tab it, I swear I'm probably going to have like every page tabbed. There were so many gorgeous passages, and the overall writing was phenomenal. Definitely a highlight of the book for me. So yeah, that came as kind of a big surprise because normally I just don't pay attention to writing styles. But Kara specifically told me to pay attention to it, and because she thought I would like it, and because of that, I made an effort to actually actively pay attention to it, and I'm so glad I did because I absolutely adored it. The setting was interesting. I definitely preferred a lot of the parts that were back in Strasbourg than I did in modern times. Just the descriptions of the setting were a lot more vivid and detailed than they were in modern day, which isn't to say modern day didn't have specific passages that stood out regarding that, because they absolutely did. I don't know, it just felt more visually tangible, if that makes sense, for that timeline than it did for the modern day timeline, though I still really enjoyed a lot about modern day as well. And just, I don't know, the magical aspects of it, I guess is what you can call them, because this is magical realism, was also really, really great. The lore of the shoes and the lore of like how the two families ultimately ended up having their histories interwoven together was really, really interesting. I don't know, there was just a lot about this that I really, really liked. The plot was honestly not the main point of the book. I mean, there were a lot of really important plot elements to it, but it wasn't the driving force of the book. The driving force of the book was absolutely the characters, and the characters drove the plot in some ways. So, I mean, the plot is basically like, as I said, there are two different timelines, and the timelines are interwoven together by these specific events of the plague, and like what people think caused it, and just all of the struggles that come along with all of that. You guys already know, like, I love plague stuff for a variety of reasons. And I don't know, it just really stuck out to me. But yeah, I really did like the plot overall, how the plague and the different cultures and everything were explored, because one of the main characters in this is Romani. And I loved that because that's not a viewpoint we get a lot in books. So I really appreciated seeing that aspect of it. And then the queer plot line, that was also really interesting, because that's also not something you see a ton of in books like this. So I really enjoyed that aspect as well. And I don't know, there was just a lot of really unique angles that this took, and I loved it. I absolutely loved it. And then finally, the characters. I really enjoyed all of them. I was probably a little bit more invested in those from the past than I was in those from the present. I really liked Emile and Rosella's plot line because they're the characters from the modern day, but I honestly really loved the past storyline more. Just really great, just really well done, and fantastic. As I said, I just love those aspects of identity and like the history and just dealing with, as I said, intergenerational trauma and all of that gets passed down. It was just all really, really, really well done. And so the three things that Kara pointed out to me in her little note to me about things that she thought I would like about this book was the writing, or the prose, like just gorgeous writing, the red shoes, and the queer themes and queer characters. And I did love all of those aspects. The writing was phenomenal. I always enjoy seeing queer things in books. And then finally, like, I wasn't sure what she meant by the red shoes. And, you know, as I read, I was like, okay, like, I'm digging the red shoe lore and, like, everything surrounding them. But I wasn't quite sure what she meant by red shoes because she didn't elaborate, which makes sense because it would have potentially spoiled some things. But I was like, what particularly about the red shoes am I supposed to be paying attention to, or do you think that I would like? But I did really enjoy the lore and everything, so that was really interesting. So yeah, all in all, I thoroughly enjoyed this book, a lot more than I was expecting to. Like, I was expecting to like it, but I don't know if I was expecting to like it this much. So now I will be back in a little bit to wrap everything about this video up. It's finally time to wrap this whole thing up and give you my final thoughts and feelings and rankings on everything. Overall, I really enjoyed doing this kind of a video for all of you and just doing this kind of project. It was so much fun, and I don't know, it just felt like a way to connect to a person. Like, reading their favorite books, especially now, is just, it's like you're connecting with them in a way, and like you have them here with you, even though you might be miles apart. I don't know, I just really loved it. It was a lot of fun, and I would absolutely do something like this again in future. But yeah, overall, I had a fantastic time doing this. To recap real quick for you, I read Empire of Sand first back in May, and then I read Where the Mountain Meets the Moon by Grace Lynn in June, and finally in July I read Dark and Deepest Red by Anna Marie McLemore. And as I said, overall, I really enjoyed all of these. Did I have a favorite from all of them? Absolutely. Did I have one that I am less of a fan of? Yes. So just giving you my final thoughts book by book, and then giving you my rankings at the end. Let's dive in. Final thoughts on Empire of Sand. Now that I've sat with this a little bit longer than when I was filming my initial thoughts, I actually had a few more issues with this book than I originally thought. Like, overall, this is still my favorite desert fantasy. I really liked it. I also just really liked, I also absolutely adored Amun as a character. But there were just a lot of things that were lacking in this. I just really wish we got more of the relationship between Amun and Mer. It just felt like something was missing the entire time, and I still to this day can't quite put my finger on what that was. Like, I really liked their interactions, but there was something missing in the middle between the beginning part and where they ended up in the end. Like, it just didn't feel like it was developed enough. And in a way, I feel like that about a lot of the characters in this book. A lot of them just didn't feel super developed. While I was really invested in this and I wanted to keep going as, I was reading, there were just, looking back on it, there was just a lot that I was like, okay, like you're giving us all this great information here and all of this great, character bits here, but it's not enough. It's not developed enough. It's not fleshed out enough. I'm just getting smatterings of it. Like the bits with Mare and her mother fell very flat to me. I know I was supposed to feel certain things about it, but I just felt frustration more than anything else. It just didn't feel right. And it wasn't explored enough. It was just kind of very rushed. And I don't know, it just didn't fit with everything, I think, as well as it could have. So the relationship and the bits with Mare and her mother, both of those were supposed to be like core parts of the book, and they weren't expanded on enough. Like, if I could sum up my thoughts on this book in a short sentence or less, it's just that things weren't expanded on enough. They were lacking in their depth and their exploration. Overall, I really did enjoy the points that Kara thought I was going to enjoy, except for I do really wish the romance there was more of it, because it just didn't feel developed properly. And the plot was very repetitive. Like, I didn't have an issue with it because it just, I don't know, it felt right for the story. But as I said, looking back, like, there could have been a lot more done. I would have loved to see more history into the world and the lore and everything. And we just got, practice sequences constantly over and over again, which were smattered and broken up with like other interactions. I don't know, I have a lot of mixed and complicated feelings on this book. Overall, I really liked it. I will probably continue the duology, unclear. I will probably continue this. And I will reread it again at some point because, as I said, I did enjoy it. It's just not a favorite, if that makes sense. Getting to my final thoughts on Where the Mountain Meets the Moon, I adored this book so much. I don't know how to explain how much I love this book, but like, now that I've had a chance to sit with this book more, I actually find myself thinking about this one quite a bit. I love the lore and the mythology. I enjoyed the characters. I loved the illustrations. They're stunning, absolutely stunning. If the cover is anything to go by, the images inside are just as gorgeous. Let me see if I can find one for you. But yeah, I just really loved all of that about this. And then just reading the author's note at the end, it just all put it into a different perspective for me, and I really liked it. There's just so much to love about this book. And I can't wait to continue on with the companion novels, because I have a feeling I'll love those just as much as this one. But I definitely enjoyed this one. Like, based on all the things that Kara thought I was going to like. Beautiful writing, beautiful art, mythology and folklore elements, just fantastic. And it just, I don't know, in some ways it was very much a mirror of a lot of the books that I read as a kid, with like the style and like just certain elements in here. Like, if you've ever read My Father's Dragon, this book had a lot of similar elements as that one. So I don't know. It was just very gripping and very, very well done. And I loved it. I'm yeah, I really loved this one a lot. Um, and I just feel like I'm gonna keep repeating myself over and over on that, but like I pretty much touched on everything I wanted to say for this in my final thoughts. Overall, still really love it, and I can't wait to pick up the next books. And then finally, we have Dark and Deepest Red by Anna Marie McLemore. I ended up liking this a lot more than I was expecting to. There was a lot of fantastic storytelling in this, and despite it being magical realism, I really liked it. I think because it just doesn't feel like the magical realism that I've been exposed to before. I don't know if there's like a movement and that it's kind of changing a little bit, but I don't know. I just really enjoyed this for so many reasons. And now that I've once again had some time to sit back and think about this one, I think about this one a lot. Because there was a lot I could identify with in this. Well, one thing, like, the plague aspects were so good to me because, like, you guys know, or if you're new here, you'll come to learn that I really enjoy plague things. And like, this book did a really good job of kind of encapsulating what I like about plague things, or like parts of things that I like about plague things, because it's like some of the things that I really like about it is how it impacts a society and how it changes a society, like economically, socially, and politically in some ways, and then how that event gets carried forward into the future, and how it influences things going forward, whether it's, art or literature or, music, all of that oftentimes has an influence. And I just really loved seeing all of that in this book. And then also just getting to see identity explored, because not only were there queer characters, but also just different backgrounds. We had, one of our main protagonists was Romani, and that's a culture that I know a little bit about because of my own family and like our interactions with those people throughout our ancestral background, I guess. I don't know, I just really liked seeing all of that come together. I really liked the element of the shoes and the fabric that was used throughout, and just how people were reacting, like the hysteria. And like, just in some ways, reading this book now was the right time, because I was able to see certain kinds of elements from this that are also present today. So I really enjoyed that aspect. There was just a lot in this book that I loved. And this specific plague is one that I am familiar with. This isn't the one that I wrote my paper on, but I did do some research into it because of there are certain images, certain plague art, I should call it, that was influenced by this specific plague. So I don't know. I just really enjoyed this one a lot as well. And this is one I probably would call a favorite, because I just do have a lot of specific connection that I wasn't necessarily expecting going in. So yeah, really loved this one, and I'm definitely planning on rereading this one in the future as well. And now giving my final rankings, I think you could probably guess at this point, but I'm not sure. So starting with the lowest and ending on a high note and going to probably my favorite. My lowest was probably Empire of Sands. Not because I didn't like it, but because it was just lacking certain things that I was looking for. And so as hard of as difficult of a decision as it is, this is probably the one that I'd say is my least favorite from this pile. And then I think in second place, and this is tough, the Dark and Deepest Red by Anna Marie McLemore. For a while there, I was thinking that this was going to be my top spot. But then once I was away from it for a while, I didn't think about it as much. Like, I definitely thought about it because there's a lot in this book that makes you think. But there were only, I don't know how to explain it. It didn't stick with me as much as I was expecting it to. So while it is pretty closely tied with my first spot, it's just slightly less because it didn't stick with me as well as I was expecting it to. But it is one that I still adore and cherish a lot. And that leaves my top spot being Where the Mountain Meets the Moon by Grace Lin. I adored this book. Like, I cannot express how much I loved this book. It was so good, so incredible. And I think about this, like, sometimes I'll just be like sitting, and then all of a sudden, like, a certain part of this book will just come back to me and just hit me in a specific way, and I'm like, whoa. So that's kind of where I'm at on this. Like, this is my top spot. Hard for me to tell you that, but I love this a lot. So there we have it. I hope you all enjoyed this kind of style. It was actually a lot of fun for me to make. And unlike my earlier vlogging experiences where it ended up being like 2.5 hours or whatever, I just really, really enjoyed doing this, and I hope you enjoyed watching. And feel free to talk to me about any of the books that I talked about here, whether you've read them or are planning on reading them. I'd love to know. But other than that, I hope you're all doing well, and I will catch you later in another video for you again soon. Bye!